Under the heavy sky of a city that never quite slept, Julián Ríos spent the entire night wandering aimlessly, his coat poorly buttoned and his head full of voices that refused to fall silent. He was 41 years old and had a life that, until recently, he firmly believed was built on solid foundations. A small apartment inherited from his mother, a watch repair shop he had built with patience and pride, and Clara, his wife, whose laughter had been for years the only music he needed to feel at home. That night began with a pointless argument, one of those born from exhaustion and accumulated frustration. Clara reproached him for his constant silence, his habit of taking refuge in work and avoiding conversations about their problems, and Julián, unable to find the right words, chose to step out into the street rather than say something he might regret. He walked along avenues slick with a fine drizzle, entered a bar where the alcohol tasted of defeat, listened to other people's stories that meant nothing to him, and let the hours slip through his fingers like sand. He did not call, he did not write, convinced that by dawn everything would remain the same, that Clara would be asleep, that his world would be waiting for him intact. When he finally returned, with the first gray rays of dawn peeking between the buildings, something in the air told him he was wrong. The apartment door was ajar, the silence too deep, and the familiar smell of freshly brewed coffee was gone. He moved forward slowly, a knot tightening in his stomach, and discovered that the photographs in the hallway no longer hung on the wall, that the coat rack was empty, and that the old clock in the living room, the one he had restored with his own hands, marked an impossible hour because it had stopped. On the table he found a brief letter, written in Clara's steady handwriting. There were no reproaches, no shouting, only a calm and painful farewell. She wrote that she had loved him, but that she could no longer keep waiting for a man who was always leaving, even when he was physically present. She wrote that she needed to learn how to live without feeling invisible, and that he, too, needed to learn to listen to the silence he left behind. Julián sat on the floor, the letter trembling between his fingers, and suddenly understood that his absence for a single night had been the final drop in a glass that had been filling for years. He walked through the apartment like a stranger, touching bare walls, opening empty drawers, and each missing object was a confirmation of his loss. He tried to call her, but the phone rang until it went dead. He ran down the stairs and out into the street, searching the crowd for a face that was no longer there, feeling that the entire city conspired to remind him of his loneliness. Days later, the workshop began to suffer. Regular customers stopped coming, watches piled up unrepaired because his once precise hands now trembled. Time, ironically, had become his enemy, and every tick was a reminder of what he had neglected. He sold tools to pay off debts, stopped eating regularly, and grew used to sleeping on the sofa, unable to face the empty bed. The neighbors whispered. Some offered words of comfort that fell short, and others simply watched with the cruel curiosity of those who have never lost anything truly important. One afternoon, while cleaning the workshop almost by inertia, he found a box Clara had forgotten. Inside were small broken watches, useless pieces to anyone but him, and an old note in which she thanked him for teaching her that even what seems irreparably damaged can work again with patience and care. That discovery broke him, and at the same time ignited something new. He realized he had spent his life repairing other people's mechanisms while letting his own rust away, and that losing everything was not only a punishment, but a belated opportunity. He closed the workshop for a week and devoted himself to putting his life in order with the same meticulous care he used to dismantle a watch. He apologized to those he had hurt with his silence, called old friends again, and, above all, learned to stay, to listen without running away. He did not get Clara back because some absences are final, but months later he received a postcard with no return address and a simple phrase, "Thank you for understanding." It promised no returns and no happy endings, only recognition. Julián hung the postcard on the wall of the workshop, reopened the doors, and began again, knowing that he had lost his old life forever, but that in that emptiness he had learned the hardest and most necessary lesson of all, that sometimes being absent for a single night is enough to lose everything, and that the true value of time lies not in measuring it, but in sharing it.